So this is the latest entry horror thriller from director M. Night Shyamalan of some such hits as almost at the Green Knight, The Sixth Sense,
Yeah.
and Signs. I have to say all his old stuff because his more modern stuff hasn't been real great. Split was very good, and of course Glass, the sequel to that. We find our characters, our main characters played by Gael Garcia Bernal and Vicky Krieps, our family going on vacation. They found some hidden resort, all expenses paid, whatever. They show up and they're having a good time. They have two young children, and the kind of owners comes up to them at one point and says, "Hey, we got this secluded beach. It's really great. No one knows about it, but I got a guy that'll take you there." And so they go to this beach. Turns out it's not so secluded. Some other people show up with there, and they're having a good time. And then they realize a couple of things are strange in that everyone is starting to quickly age. They see this primarily in their children who are 6, 7, immediately start growing up into like 9, 10, and they eventually realize it's happening to them as well. They are trapped on this beach. When they try to get off, they kind of get dizzy and pass out and end up back on the beach. They don't know what's going on. They don't know what's happening, but they know they have to try and escape and get off before they essentially age and die on this beach, which will probably happen in like 24 to 48 hours. So that's our setup. It's a little bit of a Twilight Zone thing, horror thriller genre. Zach, what'd you think?
So I wanted Old to be a little bit more than what was in the trailer, right? The trailer really came out swinging with a Super Bowl spot that was 30 seconds long that very quickly explains the beach makes you old. And that's the movie. And typically, like, the beach making you old would be like the twist at the end of a Shyamalan film, right? Oh, wait, why have we been feeling this way? Oh, the beach makes us old. That's the gag. But this movie goes the other way and just puts it right out front from the beginning. It's based on a graphic novel, and Old, ultimately, I guess I hoped it would grow and change out past the beach makes you old. Like, maybe it gets complicated. Maybe there's like another part of the beach that makes you young again. Or maybe if you swim out far enough in the current, you can halt the effects of the beach making you old. Like, maybe we can have like a temporal pincer, like in Tenet, right? Like, the beach makes you double old or something. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to report, there is not much more than what you see on screen for Old. For what you see in the trailer is what you get. The beach makes you old. That's the movie. I shouldn't have gone in expecting more than I did, but I did, and I was bummed. I wanted it to be more than the beach makes you old, but that's the movie. So let's talk about it. Andy, what's the best place to start talking about Old?
Well, I was going to say I came in with very low expectations, and I was still disappointed. So it's not just you.
Oh, good, great. I was worried. Yeah, great.
So this movie it's a big misstep for M. Night Shyamalan. I don't know how anyone approved this movie, greenlit this movie. No other studio. If he weren't financing his own films, I don't think anyone would have greenlit this script. First of all, the premise is just a little thin. There's not a lot there. It is, the beach makes you old. That's it. But I think it does have potential. You could do some good horror and stuff. He just doesn't do it. And my broad stroke about this is that what M. Night Shyamalan is trying to do, or what he used to do, is what Jordan Peele is doing now. Jordan Peele is the man for this kind of stuff, and Shyamalan is not, and hasn't been for a long time. So my big problem with this is just it's not interesting. It's boring. It's so slow in the beginning, like, because we know as the audience going in, we know what the premise is. And it's so frustrating because it takes our characters like the first hour to figure out, oh, the beach is making us old. It's not just the kids. And so that's number one. It's just painfully slow to get to where everyone's on the same page. The other thing, the depiction of aging just doesn't work very well because it's primarily only shown in the kids, and they kind of go from being 6 to being 10, from 10 to being 16. So they make kind of these big jumps in time. But it would need to be a very gradual thing. I think this premise would work better in animation. Honestly, something where you could very gradually show everyone aging, because the adults don't really age, and then they start doing some bad CGI and makeup. It doesn't really work. And there's nothing really scary about this. There are eventually some things that are more interesting, where, like, for instance, if you are hurt, like let's say you break your leg, if you're aging really quickly, it means you're healing really quickly, which means that bone might not heal correctly. Like, so there are some like health related things that are interesting because, like for instance, if you have cancer and you are aging quickly, that means the cancer is going to happen quickly. So there is some potential here. It's just not interesting, and it's not scary, and it's not thrilling or any of that.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like the gimmick has evolved on a little. Like before I jump in and say, like I just did, that it just the beach makes you old. There's nothing. That's not true. If you get injured on the beach, it's a small injury. Yeah, your injury will heal really quickly because your cells are aging at a rapid rate and they're evolving and moving and whatever. So that is kind of neat. But the movie also does not follow its own rules. There's a character later in the film who is dispatched in a most unfortunate manner. In a way that like basically breaks the rules they've already set out. And it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Like there shouldn't be a whole lot to this. The beach makes you old, and there isn't a lot to it, but they try to make more of it than there is. I think what's surprising about this, Andy, like you said, after I saw this and we started talking about it, I don't understand who would have greenlit this feature. Like, who reads this script and goes, yep, that's going to work as a live action film? Because like it really struggles, like it just across the board, everything from the narrative discourse. You're 100% right, Andy. Like, it is so frustrating to sit in this film for 45 minutes and wait for the characters to figure out the beach makes you old. We all saw the trailer. The trailer says it in 15 seconds. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, there's a big disconnect there between like editing bay and audience member.
Yeah,
and
so much time is dedicated to like, oh well, we got to get off the beach, and all these failed attempts to get off the beach, and just like it's just wasting so much time.
Yeah, and the film opens on them like getting to the resort, and all they talk about is things that are related to age and time. Every conversation, the kid's like, "Look how old you are now. I couldn't do this when I was younger." Like, it's just constant. Like, all they're talking about is time and age and aging and getting older. And then they get to the beach and they start to get older, and it's like, who put this script together, man? Like, they don't talk about. I mean, additionally, okay, let me get off Hammer and M. Night Shyamalan for a second. Additionally, a lot of the character direction is really poor. Our two leads, which is
Gael Garcia Bernal and Vicky Krebs.
Yes, I should know their names, but they're not traditionally English actors, and I do a poor job of keeping up with them. I apologize. I didn't figure that out. They're both really poorly directed. There are two leads, right? There are two protagonists. They should be the most exciting, dynamic characters of the bunch. They are very flat. They are very bland. The few sequences where they interact with each other are like one takes, one shots. Like it's like Shyamalan just set the camera up in the side of the room and was like, "Go ahead and say all your lines. I'm just going to film you for 2 minutes. Great, let's get back to the beach." And it's like, it's boring and dull, and I don't care about them. And I don't really understand their motivations. At one point, one of the characters was like, "Well, this woman's sick," and I'm like, "Did they talk about this before now?" I guess they did. I don't really remember. They did have a conversation at one point, but like I didn't really suss out what was going on there. It's a movie that I think is maybe introspective to the creator. I think Shyamalan probably looks at this and thinks this is a really thoughtful piece, and it's like ultimately it just kind of isn't. It's a little flat.
Yeah, this would make a better short, or like I said, an animated film. The other thing is, so this is based on a graphic novel by a French author called Sandcastle, and that original novel is about aging, and it's about and death and accepting both, kind of as you get older. This film is not about. It kind of deviates from what I've read. It deviates from the novel about halfway through. And again, tries to become this thriller instead of being like a meditation on the aging process, on accepting death and all these things. Like, that actually sounds interesting to me. That would be an A24 version of this. And again, he tried to take this premise and make a horror thriller out of it. And it's neither of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're totally right. It would work better in another format. Like, live action is just a struggle. So let's jump into like the actual meat and potatoes of what's going on here. The thriller aspects of it. Outside of the beach making you old, there's not that much to thrill you here, right? Like, getting old isn't thrilling. It's the opposite of thrilling. It's dull and boring and lame. Like, and so trying to ascribe that as a thrilling notion in this film is a challenge because you're just getting older, right? That we have a decent cast of characters on the beach. We've got a couple families. We've got 3 children initially. And we've got something like 5 or 6 adults and a dog. So we get a decent like petri dish of characters of different age, range, social status to be engaging with the beach that makes you old, which is kind of neat, right? We get some characters who are maybe not quite in their right minds when they start to figure this out. So you get some people who are a little nuts, and that's exciting. You get people who are crazy on a beach that makes you old. That can be cool, sure. You get a couple weapons, right? Somebody brought a knife from the dining set from breakfast. Okay, now we got something going on here. Like now we've got some thrills. But ultimately, like a lot of it just feels really forced. Like the idea that all of these characters would be trapped on a beach that makes you old and all know, hey, we're all trapped on a beach that makes you old, and we can't really figure out a way out, which is a whole other thing that we shouldn't talk about on this show. Why they can't get off the beach, you're gonna have to go see it and find out. But
it's pretty lame.
It's lame. Yeah, it's not great. It's thin. It's thin, is what it is. Yeah. Like the idea that all of these characters would somehow start turning on each other is just a little forced. Like it doesn't feel natural. I'm like, I feel like if I was on a beach that makes me old with a bunch of other people, friend or foe, family or friend, I would be cool with everybody, because ultimately we're all getting older. We all got to figure it out, right? Like we have to come together and solve our problems. That doesn't happen in this movie, and it doesn't feel. It feels like that doesn't happen out of plot convenience. We have to have a bad guy. We have to have something thrilling. We have to have some action, and it's like you totally don't. The original work didn't. Yeah, it didn't need it, and this doesn't need it. And trying to force it in feels awkward.
Well, yeah. Well, if you're gonna write a thriller, it's got to be thrilling. And this idea of something like, oh, someone's got a weapon, that could be an interesting thing. It just never is. And yeah, the cast is real. It's this weird stereotype of people. Like there's a guy who's kind of an older gentleman with a really young wife, and the young wife is like this beautiful blonde woman, but she's like obsessed with Botox. It's very like it's a little misogynistic. It's very obsessed with herself and everyone is like this stock character. Like it's like you're playing Clue, and it's like, well, yes, we need the the butler, the mad like. That's what it feels like. You chose the most stock characters you could think of and gave them the most stock things to do. Yeah,
and they're propped up on screen in ways that are deceptive. I know obviously a thriller is going to involve some deception, but like a couple of characters arrive at the beach before everybody else, and you don't really know anything about them. So when our cast gets to the beach, there's 2 people already there. That's exciting. And they're like, wait, who's that person sitting over there? What's going on with that guy? I don't know. Okay, well, we're gonna find out more about him. And in your seat in the theater, you're going, okay, hold on. I know the beach makes you old. I don't know anything about those 2 factors over there. Those 2 people, I don't know anything about. Anything could happen. Maybe they have something to do with the beach that makes you old. And like that's exciting. But that's all resolved within minutes. And then you're just left with the beach that makes you old. It's confusing. It's a confusing film. Because I don't understand why it exists. The aging effects. Let me talk about that. You already mentioned, Andy, like the kids, they just get aged up via other actors. Like the youngest son who's 6 years old after a couple transitions turns into the kid from Hereditary. Alex Wolff, that's his name. The daughter turns into Thomasin McKenzie at one point. All the other actors, though, all the adults, they don't change into other actors, and their hair does not get gray, and their nails don't get longer, and there's a reason for that explained in the film, but it doesn't make any sense because again, the movie doesn't play by its own rules. Yeah, and so they're just hit with like some cosmetic makeup. They just hit them with some fake wrinkles after every scene, and they just look a little older and a little older. There do get to be some mechanical functions with them that change up. One character is now enfeebled as she gets older, so she can't move around as effectively. Another character starts to lose her hearing because she's going deaf because she's getting older. Again, kind of interesting, kind of cool, but like there's not enough there to really reel me in, man. Like I kept thinking of Christopher Nolan's Tenet, which is a movie that lacks a lot of maybe emotional exposition, which is what this movie is trying to go for. But its time mechanics and the way it plays with how time works in the film is so captivating. Jesus, I would go see it again just to watch it and try to figure out what the hell's going on. In this movie, the beach makes you old. That's the gag. Like, we all know it. Yeah.
Well, some of the things you mentioned about like as people begin to age, and it's like, yeah, their vision starts to go, their hearing starts to go because they're being very quickly approaching what is old age. That is interesting. That is kind of horrifying.
Like, okay, yeah, there's some good body horror in there. Yeah, sure.
To go from 1 minute you can hear and 2 hours later you're nearly stone dead. Like there's some real potential with that bit of it, but it gets there so late and it does it so little of it. And it's way too long. It's a full 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it is just like, stop.
Yeah, it leaves a lot of questions. If somebody's going to advance physically, do they advance mentally? One of our characters is 6 years old at the beginning of the film. And by the end, he is older than 6. I should say towards the end of the film, he is older than 6. And he's acting like an adult. And I'm like, hold on a second. You only got school for a couple years, man. You can't even do multiplication at this point, right? Division is beyond you. And you're like talking about grand ideas to get off the beach. And it's like, are you 6 or aren't you? Like, hold on, how does this work? Like, and it's not clear. And the movie doesn't do a good job of like laying those rules out for you. And the rules it does lay out, it later goes on to just kind of turn on its head. And like, I don't know. I felt like this movie was too long. I felt like the gimmick was not deep enough, and it felt like they gave away too much in the trailers.
Well, they gave away too much because there wasn't much to give away.
Yeah, like they had to, right? Like I remember seeing that original 30-second Super Bowl spot and telling you, like, oh God, I hope that movie's deeper than what it looks like, because it looks like that whole movie's in 30 seconds.
I told you it wasn't going to be.
Yeah, no, that's the gimmick.
I think one of the comment I wanted to make about like the aging thing and how they just kind of bump up these actors, what they really needed to do, and this would have been really difficult, they should have had like 10 actors for each role, age different, like, okay, the adults are like 30, like mid 30s. Okay, so you have someone at 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60. Like you should have had like 10 actors all aged like 5 years apart for everyone. And that would have been really difficult to do probably, but you needed something to depict that aging so much better than just, CGI makeup. And again, this is why I think animation probably would work better, why it probably works much better as a graphic novel, because you can, through those mediums, very gradually depict the aging process.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the children at least get a few actors and actresses to kind of help them age up, and they do a decent job. Like you're not convinced that 6-year-old and Thomasin McKenzie are the same person, but like you throw somebody in between them that looks kind of similar. Okay. All right. Yeah, I can see the gimmick here, but the adults don't have that convenience. It's just them the whole movie. And it's like, okay, like what are we doing here? Like, are we playing by rules or aren't we? And like, it doesn't, it's just cluster. It
just screams budget cuts,
Yeah, it's just messy, and like from Shyamalan, you don't expect messy. It might be different, it might be weird, but it'll be clean execution. And this is not that way, which is really frustrating.
I don't know. I don't expect much from Shyamalan these days, unfortunately.
Me neither. From the next Spielberg, man. Like we really seemed like something was going to happen, and lately he just seems to be in this weird spot. I feel like he like Zack Snyder. He needs somebody to come along with a red pen and go, no, we're not doing this. This is bad. He just needs somebody to rein him in a little bit, because his direction is okay. His cinematography is probably his best asset. His writing is just slipping, man. It really feels like it's slipping. And it's like, you got to do something, man. This isn't going to work.
Yeah. I will say at the same time, like he's real hit and miss, and I think more misses than hits, but like I'll still always go see an M. Night Shyamalan film, because you never know. He just might knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
Like Split was a big surprise. I really liked Split.
Sure. There were a lot of parts of Glass I really liked. Like they're again, a lot of his cinematography is solid. I mean, you can watch the trailer and see some of it. Some of those shots in the trailer look real good. Like he does a great job of like catching a look or a moment that feels great, but a lot of his dialogue's really slipshod. It's just, yeah, I the more I see, the less I've come to expect. And that's a bummer. So, Andy, any other thoughts on Old before recommendations?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Old?
I would say hard pass on this, or save it for streaming if you are interested. It's definitely not worth going out in theaters. It's too long. It's misdirected. It's not scary. It's not thrilling. It's really kind of boring. I could go on. I don't want to bag on it too much, but I would say skip it. Save it for streaming at best.
Yeah, I'm going to be in the same boat. Save it for streaming at best. Even then, you probably don't need to see it. If you really like time movies and you're really interested, I feel like I would encourage you to go find the original graphic novel before you before you watch this. Like I think you'll have more to take away from it. This movie pulls back the reins on the ending of that novel and does something different, and I don't think it's better. And I haven't read the original work, and that's why I can't say for sure, but I just don't think Old is the best way to dig into what this idea is supposed to be. This idea of a beach that makes you old. Like, there's got to be a better way to do it. So I don't know. A miss from Shyamalan, in my opinion, and that's Old. Now, Andy,